All right. So we are having a winter weather day. So this video is walking through some stuff that we would be doing in class, but since we don't have a class, we're gonna pretend that we are anyway. So this is the file that's on Moodle. My data for today. Since it's cold in Iowa right now, really cold, I decided to go with weather. The Iowa State Mesonet data is really good for that. And so when you go to this website, it lets you pick and choose. And so I was able to choose Dubuque and choose the maximum temperature and the minimum temperature and snow and other things that I thought would be interesting. And then I got it into my play space by running this thing here. And so Iowa cold is my data set. I'm calling it that because I am cold and in Iowa. This data is actually for Dubuque specifically, so I could call it Dubuque cold, but I'd rather call it Iowa cold. And then read CSV should look semi-familiar. And then URL because this is a website. And then I put it in quotation marks so that it actually will be green. And so over here, you can see Iowa cold is my Iowa cold is my data set. And I'm using the read CSV function, which is going to pull a URL, and then this is the URL that goes to Iowa State. And so this is the Iowa State website, and I picked Dubuque, and then I picked all of these different things. And after I went down here, I said request data, and over here, this is what the data look like. But I don't want to look at it that way. So I come over here, and then I hit run. I forgot to clean that up. But I hit run, and then it shows up here, 27,382. And since we were practicing before taking samples, I figured I may as well take a sample. Give me an Iowa sample. And so my Iowa sample, called it that, is going to be what I get when I take my Iowa cold and I sample it 10,000 times. And so it just shows up once I run that. Then it goes over here in the memory for Iowa sample. And then the next thing I need to do is check what my names are. Before I pick a favorite column, I need to know what the names are for those columns. And so there's a names command. And so I'm taking my data set and I'm putting it into the names command. And so when I run that, then I get all these names showing up down here. And I think I put a picture. Yep, so there's all those names. So these names, I can pick the station, the day, the max temperature in Fahrenheit, the minimum temperature in Fahrenheit, the average wind speed in knots, the average wind direction in degrees, the snowfall in inches, the snow depth in inches, the minimum feels like temperature, or the maximum feels like temperature. So those are my options. And I picked the minimum feels like temperature because I'm feeling cold. And so my data set was Iowa cold, and my favorite column was min feel. And then after that, I want to skim that column so that I can find out what's going on in that data. And so I did this. So now I'm going to skim it. And so I need a name for the thing I'm going to save. And so since it's min feel, I figured MF and results so that I know what I'm looking at. So MF results is my new thing that I get when I take my Iowa cold minimum feel column and I push it into the skim function. All right, so those are the three things I'm doing. So I've got the thing I'm created is the old thing that I'm skimming. You can split it out into multiple lines or you can have it as a single line. It doesn't matter. And then you run it and then it'll show up over here. And so I get this one observation of 12 variables from my MF results. But since it's saved over here, I don't see it. And since I want to actually see it, I can just type MF results and then run it. And then it'll show up down in the console area. And so that's there. On the guide, I have a whole bunch of links because I want you to be able to read this bit here where it says mean, SD, P0, P25, like all of those things. The P0 is your 0th percentile or your minimum. P25 is your 25th percentile or your first quartile. I use the word quartile, Quartile. P50 is your median. P75 is your Q3, my third quartile. P100 is your maximum. And you can read about them in chapter 2.3 of our book. The mean and the median are described in detail in chapter 2.5. And if you actually look in chapter 2.5, you can find out what the word statistic actually means. And since we're in statistics, I thought you should notice that. The standard deviation, SD, is also described in chapter 2.7. Sometimes we call the mean mu, the Greek letter mu, mu, and the standard deviation sigma, sigma. It's also another Greek letter. And then also in the chapter 2 review, further text is a good summary that has everything put together, and it gives you an outlier formula. And so I am going to use the outlier formula. And it says I need to have this 1.5 times the IQR, and I'm taking that away from different spots. I ran out of room on my little window. There we go. The X is going to go away in a second. Review formula. There we go. Now my comments are readable. And so the outlier formula is Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR, and then Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. And so I need to find the IQR. And the IQR, if you check the review, is just your Q3 minus Q1. And so since I saved those results, I don't have to know what Q3 and Q1 are, or I just say, give it to me. And so MF results, numeric P75 is Q3. And then P25 is Q1. And so take the big one minus the little one, and I'm going to save that as the IQR. And then to find the left cutoff, I do the Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. And so you can see this is that Q1, and then 1.5 times the IQR. And then the right cutoff is Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. And so those are those same formulas. And then you run each of those, and you get, it looks like nothing happened because they showed up over here on the right side. And if you look on this window, you can actually see what they are. I have my window squished, but here you can see the IQR left and right. To see if there's an outlier, I have to compare the minimum to the left cut and the maximum to the right cut, and to see if they're beyond it. And so the minimum was P0 and the maximum was P100. So I'm going to run them both. And so P0 was negative 59 degrees. I need to figure out what day that was. And then P100, the minimum feel like was 80. And so when I look at those, the left cut was negative 47, which is higher than negative 59. And so there's an outlier. The right cut was 119, which is higher than the maximum, which is 80. So there's no outlier on the right. And so that's what these two sentences say. All right, now connecting it to stepping stones 11 and 12. 11 and 12, we need center, spread, and outliers. And we essentially have center and outliers, and we just need the spread. And the spread is the max minus the min. And so I just take the maximum, P100, minus the minimum, P0, and save that as spread. Because why calculate it by hand when I can have my computer do it for me? And so then I've got this 139 is my spread. And so now I've got center, spread, and outliers. To finally claim stones 11 and 12, I need to put it in context. Right? My program is done. I've done the things, but I need the context. And so the context is that I remember I'm looking at temperatures in Dubuque. And if I go back to the Mesonet website, I can see that it started at January 1 of 1900. And so I'm looking at the Iowa temperatures starting there in 1900. The minimum feels like temperatures range from negative 59 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, because that was my minimum max. A spread of 139 degrees Fahrenheit, which is kind of scary. The minimum feels like temperatures averaged around 33 degrees Fahrenheit, and we got that because of the skimming, right? There's my 33. with the standard deviation of 25.9 degrees Fahrenheit. It's right there. And then the median minimum feels like temperature was 34.5. It's right there, your P50. Using the median outlier formula, because there's more than one outlier formula, I had to specify that I'm using the median one. Anything less than 47 degrees, right? Remember my left cut was 47, negative 47, will be an outlier, and anything greater than 119 degrees Fahrenheit, because my right cut was 119, will be an outlier. And there was at least one outlier. There could be more. I haven't checked anything like that. To the left of center, because I had that minimum was less than negative 47, and there were no outliers detected on the right. So all of that is my context. And so remember, when I'm programming this, the last step is to come over to presentation, decide where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it right here. Hashtag stones 11 and 12. And I'm going to put in code block. I can hit Control-Alt-I, or I can come to +CR. Both of them work. If you're not sure what the shortcuts are, there's a way to view the shortcuts. But just hit +CR. Get your gray space. Make sure you've got a line in the middle. Come over to programming. Copy it. Cut it. Bring it back to presentation and paste it. And then this lets you do the whole thing from start to finish in one go. It's going to take a minute to load my data again, but then it gets everything in one thing right here. And so there's my skimming, and there's the rest of it that I asked for. All right, that is it. Let me see if I can